Welcome back to the Achievement Apex podcast, the podcast where I share my knowledge and experience so that you can learn something new that you can implement into your life to improve it in one way or another. I'm your host, Brendan Murphy, and today I'm going to share with you the culmination of 4 years of study in goal setting and achievement. In fact, I've read a multitude of books on this, and I feel like I'm at the point now where I have enough knowledge that I can pass on to you guys so that you have literally the best practice to write your goals to maximize your chance of reaching them. This is going to be a comprehensive analysis of everything you should be doing to achieve your goals. And we'll start by asking the question, what is a goal and what is not a goal? Now you might be thinking, oh, come on, I know what a goal is. But when I hear people share their goals, a lot of the times I'm like, thinking to myself, that's not a goal. Like, they might say, oh, my goal is to brush my teeth every day. But that's not a goal. The goal is, I want my teeth to be whiter and I want my gums to be healthier. That's the goal. Brushing your teeth every day is the means to achieve it. So it's important when you're setting your goals that you are not confusing the means with the actual goal itself. Okay, so you always hear people saying, oh, I'm setting my goal to this, I'm changing my goal to that, but they never explain why they're doing it, and sometimes they might not even have a reason themselves. So why do we set goals? And the reason is, when you set your goals and you follow specific practices to maximize the impact of that goal setting, you'll find that it dramatically increases your chances of being successful, of reaching that goal that you set. And there's a whole multitude of ways that people set goals. Some people just keep them in their head. Some people write them down. Some people might record themselves saying what they want and they play it back to themselves every now and then. But what is the best way to set your goals? Personally, I think the best way to do it is to write them down with a pen and paper physically. And the reason is because when you do this, it becomes like more meaningful to you. Like, it's very easy to just jot something down on your phone or to keep it in your head or like tell someone on social media, like sending a message to your friend, right? All those other things are little and insignificant and you're likely to forget them. They don't mean that much to you. But when you're writing them down, it takes more time and therefore you attach more like emotional connection with the act of doing that. And when you have more emotional connection to your goals, you're going to have more drive to reach them. So we know that writing them down is probably the best way to write your goals, but even still, there's a ton of different ways you can write them down. And that ranges from simply writing, literally, have more money, to writing, in 3 years, I want to have a net worth of $150,000. And it's not just as simple as one or the other. There's a whole spectrum, okay? Here's what I think is the best way to write them down. First, you need to decide what your big ultimate goal is. Like, over the course of your whole life, what do you want to achieve? Okay? For me, I have this kind of triangle, I like to call it, and it's have a net worth of $100 million. And then on the other part of the triangle, it's generate $100 million in profits for my clients, and then donate $100 million to charity. And that's like my $100 million triangle. So that's my big ultimate goal. And obviously yours is going to be different, right? Just because that's my goal doesn't mean that should be yours. So once you've decided on your big goal, beneath that, you want to write down your 10-year goal or 20-year if you're reasonably young and you have that kind of time. But basically, whatever your big goal is, your 10-year goal should be something that puts you on track to reaching the big one. So if my big one is 100 million, my 10-year one might be 10 million. And then beneath that, you want to have a 5-year goal. And beneath that, a 2-year goal or a 3-year goal. Beneath that, a 1-year goal. Beneath that, 6 months. Beneath that, 1 month. And then beneath that, either 1 week or 1 day. Okay, so we know that you need to have your big one and have intermittent goals that lead up to that. Now, when it comes to defining these intermittent goals, you want to make them very precise and very specific. You can't just write 100 million, 10 million, 5 million, 100,000. they need to be specific. So for example, your goal might be in 1 year, I grew my business to $100,000 valuation. So you might write, in 1 year, I grew my business from $10,000 to $100,000 valuation. And that's much more detailed than just writing $100,000 business, okay? So they need to be very specific and very detailed. And another tip, this isn't for everyone. I like to do this, and it's utilizing the power of manifestation. So when you have your specific goal, in 1 year, I grew my business to $100,000 valuation. You could also write it like this. I grew my business to a $100,000 valuation in 1 year. Write it as though you've already done it. And some people like this, some people don't. I like it because I believe that in order to achieve something, you first have to believe that it's in you first. So let's say if I believe I'm a poor man, I'm destined to be poor, even if I'm writing down I want to be rich, how am I ever going to be rich if I believe I'm poor? So if I'm writing it down as if I've already done it and I'm instilling that belief in myself, I personally think that'll increase your chances of reaching them as well. So to summarize this little section, you want to have your grand goal with intermittent steps that all play into each other to reach the final one. You want them to be extremely specific and detailed and precise. And if you like the idea, you can use the power of manifestation to instill the belief in you that you have what it takes to achieve them. Okay, so now that we've established that you should write your goals down so you can achieve them, and we know how we should write them down, how often should we write them down? Should you write them once a year, 6 months, every day? That might be your personal preference, but I believe in writing them down every day. I write mine down every day before work. So every day before work, if you're writing down all of your goals and these goals mean something to you, you're going to feel really motivated and driven to get to work to achieve those goals. Whereas if you write them down every year, at the start of the year, you're going to be like, yeah, this is going to be my best year ever. Let's go. And then 1 month passes, 2 months passes, and by the end of it, you're like, work's boring, man. Whereas when you write them down every day, you're always going to be motivated to work because you know exactly why you're doing it. You're getting a constant reminder. Okay, so we know that writing your goals every day could lead to more motivation and drive for your work. Now, I'm going to give you some advice here that's going to dramatically increase the power of your goals. And that is that, 1, your goals must align with your core beliefs, or your core beliefs must align with your goals, as we touched on earlier. And 2, you need to attach meaning and purpose, some kind of emotional connection to your goals. And an example of how to do this is, instead of just writing your specific goal, which could be, I want $100,000 in 1 year, you then give it a why, okay? I want $100,000 in 1 year because I can use this money to grow my business, because my business provides values to my customer, because I believe in sharing this kind of knowledge and giving this advice so that people can succeed in their lives. So when you expand the horizons of your goals to including not just yourself, but all of society, you're going to find that the motivation and drive you get from writing them down every day is just unmatched. Nothing else compares to that. Now, when it comes to writing down all of that why, purpose, society stuff, right? I understand that's a lot to write down. I think the benefit of writing down the huge why every day probably doesn't outweigh the amount of time it takes, because that's a lot of writing. So whenever you set your goals, write them once. And if you change your goals, then you want to make sure you're going ahead and writing that why again and making it powerful. All right, moving on. How high should you set your goals? I'm sure you've heard it from plenty of people. Don't set your goals too high. Set realistic goals that you know you can achieve. What's the point of setting a goal that you know you can achieve? There's no point. There's no point writing it down to drive you, to motivate you to work if you know that you can achieve it. At that point, it shouldn't even be a goal. That should just be a given, right? You want to set goals that no one else thinks you can achieve, that only you think you can achieve. All right? You want other people to hear your goals and go, you can't do that. That's ridiculous. And you don't need to have an argument with them, but you want that to light a fire in yourself that gets you going. It's like, I'm going to show you. I'm going to prove you wrong. Okay? I believe in shoot for the moon and land amongst the stars, which doesn't make sense because the stars are further away than the moon, but you get the saying, right? Okay, set your goals really high, and even if you only get like halfway, you're still like at double the level of the guy that sets realistic goals, right? So that's what I think, okay? Set them stupidly high that you're the only person that thinks you can do them. Now, setting your goals that high is probably going to have the effect of increasing the pressure on you to achieve them. Like, not only setting them at that high, but what if you share them with people? You share them with people close to you. I'm going to do this. I know I have no right to set my goal this high, but I think I can do it. And you tell everyone. Now, all of a sudden, everyone expects you to achieve that, and that puts a lot of pressure on you to achieve it because you're going to feel like a failure if you don't. And I personally, I thrive under pressure for the most part, and I think I went overboard at one point with sharing my stupidly high goals, and it ended up leading to kind of like this spiral of depression. I'm not going to get into it, but just be careful with how many people you share your goals with, okay? Probably stick with a few that are close to you. Don't go telling everyone, and only share those with people who really support you, okay? And do your best to monitor the amount of pressure you're putting on yourself, because if you let that pressure get too high, it's going to weigh you down and you might crack under the pressure. Now, that's easier said than done, right? Let's say you do put too much pressure on yourself and you do crack. How do you deal with not reaching your goals? Okay? It's one thing to say this is how you deal with them. It's another thing to actually be there, and you're probably going to feel lonely and like, oh, you don't understand what I'm going through. But if you can, try to take a step back and look at where you were a year ago or 2 years ago. Because I set my goals stupidly high, and then when I went through that bad time, I felt like a failure, right? But now, just looking back, even 2 years ago, the amount of progress I've made, it surprises me. I didn't know that I'd make this much progress in 2 years. Like when I started the Achievement Apex and I looked back at my old videos on this channel, that was just like when 2 years ago, I was sitting in my bedroom when I lived with my parents, like with this stupid light on me. It looked terrible, and the advice probably wasn't that good either. I still stand by most of it, but I didn't explain it very well. I watched one the other day and I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
You buy an awesome lawnmower to mow your lawn, and it mows your lawn super good, right?
But just seeing in 2 years how I went from like in my little bedroom at home to now I've got this 2-story house and I've got my own office, like it's great. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that to make sure you appreciate what you've done for yourself when you're feeling down because you didn't reach your goals, okay? Because you might not have reached the moon, but you might have got 90% of the way there. And that's not something to beat yourself up over. That's terrific. And remember how we said, set your goals high, and even if you reach 50%, that's great, okay? So make sure you remember that as long as you're doing better than you were last year or last month or 10 years ago, then you're on the right track. And you should try your best to realize that it's okay not to smash your goals every time. So some people might have the question, can I change my goals? I know that I used to be really like set in my goals. I'm like, I'm not changing these for anyone. I set them now for a reason, and I'm not going to change them in the future because I set them for a reason. Well, I think there's kind of like a balance, right? You don't want to be changing your goals every week, right? Because what's the point of even writing them down? Like, so if you set your goal, right, you want a ton of followers, and then next week you completely change and you're like, I want to be spiritual and meditate and all that. Like, they're completely different. And I'm not saying that one's better than the other, but what I am saying is that don't just like hop and change every week, okay? You want to have some you want to at least stick to them for some length of time. But there is going to be times where as you learn and you grow, you're going to start to realize that the world isn't as you thought it was in the past. And in light of that, you're going to want to change your goals. And I think as long as you're thinking rationally and you genuinely want the new goal more than the other one, and it's not like you're trying to make excuses to change them, then I think by all means you should change the goal, because that's going to lead to greater fulfillment and happiness in your life. And lastly, we're going to talk about celebrating your wins when you reach those little intermittent milestones. I think for each step of the way, the bigger the goal was, the bigger you can celebrate. But at the same time, you don't want to celebrate every single little thing, because as I learned recently on the Andrew Huberman podcast, he spoke about how when you reach a goal and you celebrate it, that changes the amount of dopamine and norepinephrine that's released in the brain and has a temporary effect of reducing your drive for your goals. So if you're celebrating literally every single small win you have, that's actually going to reduce your drive and slow down your progress. But at the same time, I think it's important to celebrate the wins, because if you're never celebrating and you're never feeling proud of yourself, then what's the point of having the big goals if you're never being proud of yourself, of what you've achieved? Hey dude, want to come out on the weekend? No, I can't. I got to work on my goals. Hey dude, do you want to come have lunch? No, I can't. I got to work on my goals. You don't have to be like a machine that never celebrates and just works. When you achieve something, be proud of yourself, be happy, and if you want to, share that with people you care about. Like, hey, look, I reached my goal. How awesome is this? It's okay to be good like 70, 80, 90% of the time. You don't have to be on 100% of the time. And actually, I've found in my experience that forcing yourself to be on 100% of the time leads to burnout. And that's how I ended up going through my phase of depression and that. Okay, so that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover in this podcast. I'm just going to do a quick summary now if you are taking notes and you want to summarize it all. So a goal is an end result that you want, not the means to achieve it. You should set goals because it increases your chance of reaching them and succeeding. The best way to set your goals is to write them down and make sure you have some kind of metric to track over time to see your progress. You should write them starting from your big goal and having intermittent goals that all reach each other, kind of like, a ladder leading to your success. You want them to be very specific and detailed, and if you like, you can write them as if you've already done them to instill the belief in yourself that you can achieve them. Your goals need to align with your core beliefs, and if you attach a very deep and powerful meaning to your goals, it'll increase the drive you have to go after them. You should set your goals extremely high so that you're the only person that thinks you can achieve them. But at the same time, you don't want to go nuts sharing this with everybody and putting too much pressure on yourself that you fold and you stop going for them. You can change your goals, but you should probably not do it too often, because at that point you kind of go on this path and you don't actually follow a clear-cut line to success. And you should celebrate your wins. I think you should celebrate bigger depending on the size of the win, but at the same time, you don't want to celebrate every single little win. If you learned something valuable here, I'd appreciate it if you liked the video. If you could follow me on Instagram and Facebook at The Achievement Apex. You can check out the website, www.achievementapex.com, and I'll see you on Saturday for my trade review. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye-bye.